Hello, good evening, good evening, one and all. Welcome to another Jael Joseph live show. I am your host, Jael Joseph, and tonight we are doing it the Ray Astor Foundation way, right? So this is the way we're doing it tonight. We're gonna be bringing on two amazing individuals. They're gonna come one at a time because we're having some technical difficulties logging in. So again, I just wanna before we get into the gist of things, wanna apologize to those of you who came on time for the event, and we were a bit delayed because of technical difficulties. We're still having technical difficulties. We're trying to pivot at this present moment. However, we do have one of our guests joining us virtually, and we're going to be talking to her. But today, we're focusing on caregivers' role in stroke recovery. Over the last couple of months, we've been focused on stroke and various aspects of it. We've touched on why the foundation was established. We talked about living with stroke and just someone's experience, going through a stroke and the recovery process. And now we're talking a little bit about the caregiver's role in recovery. I want to say a special good evening to those of you who are tuned in on Facebook, those of you who are on YouTube, and those of you who are on LinkedIn. Good evening to you. And as soon as you come on, please share the live. Click on the share button. One of the things that we were actually discussing earlier on today, one of the guests and I were talking about, how people are so excited when it's politics and when it's rate-tay and when it's pampalang and when it's the serious stuff concerning your health, concerning your wealth, concerning your happiness. It almost seems like as if we're not happy. We want to mourn, and we're not really as encouraged to log in and get an understanding. And I feel like those experiences are experiences we need to know about too, so we don't make the same mistakes, whether it concerns us as people who might at some point in life get sick, or whether it actually has to do with somebody that we're related to in terms of how we care for them, as in today's episode will breathe life to. So we're going to be talking to Tamara Astafanbola is here, and we're going to start the conversation with her. I don't want to keep you guys waiting any further. We want to get this right on its way, and hopefully Rosalind can join us at some point. Good evening to those of you online. Let me know where you're logged in from. Give me a little wave, a little hi, say something so we know you're there. Thank you very much again for joining in, and we hope that you enjoy this segment. All right. This episode is brought to you by the Ray Astor Foundation, as I said from the beginning, and we do thank them for their support. And this initiative, I think, is very important. Hearing the statistics, especially in Dominica, and probably it's very similar across the Caribbean, where in Dominica, every week we have like 7 strokes on a weekly basis. Dominica only has 70,000 people barely, right? So that's concerning. And there are things that you can do. We encourage you to follow the RAYASTA Foundation page. That's RAYASTA Foundation, as well as RAYASTAFoundation.org. I want to welcome Tamara to the show. So without further ado, let's make her feel welcome. Hi, Tamara.
Hello, Jael.
How are you?
I am well. I'm in my gazebo in Florida, and it's nice and chilly for a change. So I'm enjoying the outdoors.
Well, enjoy. And I'm so glad to have you here with me. I know we're going to be talking about something that might be a little bit difficult, for some, for others, or even for you, it might be difficult for you to share. But first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule and for allowing the viewers, the listeners, the followers a bit of insight into the caregiver's role in stroke recovery. But you're not only a caregiver, you're something else. So you bring a different dimension to it, which
Right.
is very interesting, to say the least. And I think we also need to have that perspective. So I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. Let the viewers know a little bit about you.
Mhm.
I would like to know, firstly, your professional perspective.
Yeah.
So what you are professionally, because we're gonna talk about certain things that people might say, but what you know about that now? So we're gonna give them some of your the insights into who you are professionally, and then we'll start talking a little bit about personally in terms of how you can even talk to being a caregiver.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and I was telling you earlier that I'm a clinical psychologist turned stay-at-home mommy, who is now homeschooling my kids. So during the pandemic, I basically everything was going virtual, and I had a private practice, and I had already started homeschooling one of my children, and once that happened, I realized I needed to homeschool my other child, and my family took the decision that I was going to put my profession on hold for a while to homeschool the kids. So I've been in the field for about 20 years, give or take, including training and postdoc and all of that and career. Um, and I've worked in a variety of settings, doing some neuropsychology work during my training was included. So getting a little bit of understanding for the neurology or neuropsychology um, has come in handy. Um, I'm also I was also a part-time, and I was a full-time caregiver for my mom who had a stroke during the pandemic,
Wow.
and now I'm part-time as her caregiver. So I have some good insight into what happens to a person after stroke. So the theory of what can happen psychologically after a stroke became very practical for me. And prior to that, I was caregiver to my mother-in-law, who died of dementia. And so this is this is something that came in handy because about 25 to 30% of people who have strokes develop dementia within 5 years. And that's called vascular dementia. So people know that when they think of dementia, they might think of Alzheimer's, and they think, oh, your memory, you start forgetting things. But dementia is way more than just memory.
Hmm.
Um, and being able to spot the early signs of that allowed me to get my mom, evaluated early. So we can sort of go
We'll
back.
get into that. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Hmm.
But that is really good. A good foresight, in terms of what you're speaking of. So we have an understanding as to what we can talk to, where we can lead, and where this conversation is potentially going to go.
Hmm.
I am excited to say that Rosalind has joined us.
Yay.
So we're going to bring her on. Hi,
Yes.
Rosalind.
Hi, Rosalind.
Hi.
Gasa
Hi.
Nuba Oswela. But but
Yes,
my
yes.
mother would have said, God is good.
I know he is.
Welcome. It's good to have you on with me.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for having me.
we're just past the introduction. So Tammy was just introducing herself. So
Yeah.
your presence right now is very much welcomed, because you can introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about who you are, and a little bit about you being a caregiver.
Not a caregiver. Why I did the course. Why I was interested in the program.
So talk to us about
Okay.
that.
So I am Rosalind Sorrento. I worked in Harris Spence as a manager for 41 years. So I'm retired now. And when I heard of that course, was at the same time, during that period, my mom had a stroke.
Mhm,
And I was like, wow, that sounds interesting because I don't know what is going to happen.
mhm,
Who is going to, true, she has three daughters, but who is going to take care of her? It would be more convenient for her to leave. And then two others are married. I am not. And I figure out, why? I think I should do that course because I may just have to take my mom.
And
And
then
the
you
timing was so perfect. It
wow.
was just perfect timing when that happened and that was being advertised. And I went for it.
Wow. So
And I
we'll
must
talk
say
a
it was
little
a very good program.
we'll talk a little
Yeah,
bit about the program and your process and have and if you
right.
had to actually if you did any work, in terms of um whatever you learned. We'll talk a little bit about that.
All
I
right,
want
no
to
problem.
again and thanks again for joining us. And I want to
Yeah.
go back to Tammy for a little bit,
Mhm.
um, because she has had a longer period of time where she's had to not just understand what was going on with her mom, but live with it in terms of having someone who had a stroke. Tammy, can you take us back to when or why you initially had to fill in the role as a caregiver?
Okay. So, mom had the stroke in the summer of 2020. So that's sort of like a couple of months after the pandemic started. So she was in Dominica and I'm in Florida. Um, and um, Initially, my role was to provide support long distance. And so we knew that she needed caregivers initially round the clock because she lived alone. Um, and so I started off interviewing caregivers long distance, talking to them, arranging schedules with my brothers who were back home, and
Mhm.
sometimes sitting with mom during her speech therapy or her physical therapy via video conference, to encourage her and so forth, making sure that whatever needs she had were being met. um, I couldn't go down right away because of lockdown, as you guys probably remember. And I was homeschooling my kids. So we're talking 2020 into 2021. So I was able to go down maybe after about 11 months to Dominica. And when I went down to Dominica, I realized, wow, my brothers were stressed out. Okay, because this is a situation where if someone's had a stroke and it's significant enough of a stroke, they need round the clock care. And so they're trying to m- juggle their families or their work and making sure that caregivers are there. Sometimes you have caregivers not showing up and they have to sit in, spend the night with mom on the floor, and it was just a lot for them. And so I thought, I better bring her up here. She's a dual citizen. Bring her up here. I wanted to figure out where exactly the stroke was. CT scan wasn't working in Dominica, so we didn't know where in her brain got affected, but her eyes were giving her trouble. She had balance problems. Obviously, there was speech problems and all of that. So I thought, let me
So,
bring
so
up.
without going further, I just kind of want to get a sense of, because there are different symptoms that follow when someone gets a stroke, and you just mentioned or you just pointed out a few of them that your mom was experiencing.
Mhm.
What was the at what stage would you say she was when you saw her? Like, was it to a point where she could? Because I know sometimes people have a stroke, they can't move, they're immobile, they're in their bed, or some people have strokes and it just paralyzes one side of their body, their face, or their hands. Where was your mom in terms of um her recovery, or should
A
I
great
say,
question.
yeah, where was
Okay,
she
that's
when
a
you?
great question. She had already had some speech therapy and she had some physical therapy. And so she had what we would call hemiparesis, so weakness on one side, but it wasn't full paralysis. And so she was walking slowly, but her right leg was dragging. Um, she was able to form words again. She had learned to speak again, but she had aphasia, and aphasia is the difficulty either speaking or understanding language. And so, and that's very common with stroke. So she would have difficulty thinking of words. So she would say that, take that, or whatever. What else? Let's see. I had started seeing the signs of depression. She was withdrawn. Now, this is so when we're talking about the psychological effects of stroke, the psychology of it has to do with mood and affect on one hand, you have behavior on another hand, and you have cognition. So, when someone has a stroke, depending on what part of the brain is affected, they will have certain deficits. But um, you probably want to anticipate that the person is going to have problems feeling down and depressed and perhaps hopeless. They're grieving the loss of their abilities. So if you're having a person who was very independent,
Yes.
like my mother, very independent, always busy, 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 and now she needs help with someone preparing her meals, she needs help with someone bathing her, because she had
Mhm,
balance problems. All right. So
mhm.
the area of her brain that was affected, balance was a huge issue. She was experiencing dizziness. So she was fearful of falling, fearful of being left alone. So there was anxiety developing, and there was depression. Now, I had spoken to physicians from up here before I even went down, saying that I had some concerns because I could hear it about depression developing. And we talked about medicine. Now, in our culture, we're
Mhm.
not too thrilled about medication. Um,
That's
patient,
it's a little bit tougher to convince us to take medication.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, and so, um, trying to even to convince a physician to consider putting her on an antidepressant, that was tough. But when I went down, I continued the conversation. When I decided to bring her up, I realized the anxiety was debilitating. Um, so we had that addressed, and I kept the whole medication for depression thing for up here. Okay. Let me see. Sometimes I go off tangent, so you might need to
No,
reel
that's
me
okay.
in.
That's okay. That's okay. I think you're trying to explain it to us. You're telling us a story, and obviously you're gonna insert parts of you because you
Yeah.
had a lot to do, in terms of and without cutting you off, this is something that you are also trained to witness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So hearing your mom, and again, as the locals, we ourselves, we might not recognize, or we might say, oh, she just done, she just having a bad day,
Mhm.
or oh, mommy, free up yourself now, like, let's do a little, you think but it's a lot more than that, because there, like you rightfully explained, that person's entire life has now shifted,
Right.
unexpectedly, and now they are completely dependent on the aid of someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're hearing your mom on the phone, and obviously you could tell, that not my mom, that not my jovial mommy, that's not how
Mm-hmm.
she accustomed of sounding, and you
Mhm.
you you were concerned from
Yeah.
a professional perspective,
Yeah.
as well as the fact that this is your mom and you grew up with, and you expect a certain excitement in her voice and all of that. And often we focus on the physical
Mm-hmm.
more in the Caribbean, and we
Yeah.
we ignore. I would not even say we don't pay attention to, or we pay a little attention to. We completely ignore the mental aspect, because we feel like you can just put on a music and drink two rum
Mhm.
and we happy.
You
Yeah.
okay?
That solves all problems. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you're expressing in that manner, that you're showing us how you were reacting, as well as how your mom was behaving,
Mm-hmm.
or to your mom's behavior, to understand what some of the things we can expect. So continue.
Right. And so it was particularly bad during the pandemic, because whereas if someone has a stroke in normal day-to-day life, they might have friends, family coming to visit. But she went for a period of having no contact, very little contact. And then even when there was contact, people were scared about spreading the virus and so forth. So there was isolation, and that, would contribute to depression. When I went down, she was talking about death. Maybe I should have died. I feel like I'm going to die. And my mom was never a person to ever talk like that.
Mhm.
Then there's the loss of interest. Now, people manifest depression differently. A person might look down, or a person might just lose interest. There's an apathy. They don't They're not interested in the things that they used to be interested in. Now, you think about the person's hobbies. What did they like? And like my mom always liked keeping her home, cooking, and so forth. But she didn't care about that. Now, with a man, it might be different, right? Whatever a person's hobbies are, they will lose interest in it. Or if you see them losing interest in it, then
That's
that's
fine.
something to be concerned about. Are
Mhm.
they becoming self-conscious? Like there's a everything gets affected, um, between the cognition and you're having problems communicating. You become self-conscious. Then maybe you're walking, with a limp, or you're partially paralyzed. Then a person might start to wonder, are people looking at me? Do I look like a cripple? Do I look like I'm disabled? um,
Mhm.
I do I want to be around people? I don't want people to see me like this. So then your self-esteem gets a blow. um, what else? Oh, there might be frustration and anger, because before they would do everything for themselves, right? But imagine you are a person, a go getter, and now you have to wait until whoever comes to help you. Or you ask somebody to do something, or you're trying to express something, do this for me, but you can't get the words out. You get frustrated, you get irritable, you get angry. And so these are the things that, folks can keep an eye out for, anger, depressed mood, anxiety, and find ways to intervene. If it means getting more support so friends can visit, but you want to take your cues from the stroke survivor themselves.
Mhm.
Um, they may not feel they're ready to be around certain people. They may feel like some people make them feel comfortable and others make them feel more self conscious. So you
Mhm.
want to listen to that and sort of follow their guide. I don't want to
Thank
go
you
into,
very
yeah.
much. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I see Rosalind is acknowledging and agreeing. And
Mhm.
you know, Rosalind, I know you decided to take this step because I mean, not often people just I don't see people saying, "Nah, I want to go and take a course in caregiving." Like like how when you saw the promotion that the Rayasta Foundation they were doing, why did I mean, you mentioned that obviously you were concerned that if you had to look after your mom, but somebody might just say, oh, I can look after my mother. Like, why do I need to take a course
Mm.
in this just to look after my mother? What was it for you? What was the turning point for you that made you realize that it's not just a course, taking a course to understand what it, what it entails, but something that could completely change the outcome of your mom?
Right. That was my concern because it was her stroke was a mild stroke where it was basically her mouth went on the side, and then first of all we observed the signs was I called her right after my birthday and I said, "Well, how did your day go?" And she said, my finger is bothering me, so I called the doctor." So I said, "Your finger is bothering you and you call the doctor? That does not add up. Why would you call the doctor for a finger?" So I
Mhm.
thought, let me get back to you. So I called my sisters. Then she called me back and said, "Didn't you find her speech a little funny?" I said, "I'm not sure." Then they went up to pick her up because she lives in the country.
Mhm.
When they got there, the lady is cleaning her house, or she's not leaving the house dirty. When she get down to it, so she still went to the bathroom and bathed again. And it's after the hours in the hospital, that's when the face started getting crooked. You could see drooping at that time. Then at that time, the hand was a
Y'all
little,
had a good
yeah,
time. Y'all
right.
caught
So at that time, the hand, she was moving it less, but she was determined. Because the first night she spent at the hospital, when she got up in the morning, she was like moving her arms and said, "I need to get out of this place and I've started a quilt because she does sewing. I
Mhm.
need to continue doing my quilt and I need to continue." And she was like, the nurse said, "Wow, this is a determined person. Please do not assist her if she can help herself. Whatever she feel like doing, let her do it so that we could at least know the limitations, what she could do, what she couldn't do." But it's like, because it was the right hand would help with the feeding, and you had to be very patient with, oh, she chew because of the mouth. So we had to know that we have to be patient with her and these kind of things. And would go by turns. One would bring breakfast, one would bring lunch, one would bring dinner. So it wouldn't be too heavy on to take care of her. Then
Mhm.
she stayed by me But then I soon had to move her over to my other sister because I have bathtubs in my house. So as a result, I'm remodeling my house to suit my mom now and having showers
Wow.
because she couldn't lift the leg into the bathtubs. So that is probably one thing people need to look at. How you build your house, your bathrooms, because she couldn't lift her leg into the bathtub.
I myself don't
So
like
now I
talk.
have to have
I don't like
showers.
talk. I
Right.
don't
So
like
now I
talk.
have to do walk-in showers where she could just walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we realized, well, because of the hand, we decided we have to get help for her
Mm-hmm.
because she decided she wants to go to her home. No old people stays at your home. And she started, oh, we're not taking her to her home. We're not taking her to home. Then we got 24/7 help for her. So the person was a living help.
Now, Rosalind,
We had somebody living.
before you
Hmm.
continue telling us, about this, you spoke to something that I feel is very important for folks to take note of, is the fact that you guys had to start moving her around from one person to the another, because and we don't realize how it affects both the person as well as you were
Yes, yes.
affected because you feeling like you cannot do what you need to do, so you need to get help from your other sibling,
Mhm.
and at the same time that person is feeling like "Moi, sans ton chono." They just moving me
No,
from
no,
one
no.
to the
She didn't feel that way because she knows her children love her. She didn't feel that
well,
way. She
well,
didn't feel that way.
but you don't know
Yes.
she could also internalize it because
Internally, no, no, no. I
you know
don't think so
why.
because
Mhm,
right. Then when we started the therapy, we took her to a therapy at the hospital to make sure she could go on the bicycle to do her exercises. I even gave her my exercising bicycle so that at home she can continue. But
mhm.
mom is now back. She's now back to normal. She's doing her sewing again. She's doing her own cooking, but we still have the additional help for her. But she
Wow.
is back to normal.
Wow. I
Yeah.
want to talk. I want to
But
ask a little bit about um the
the
course,
cost,
what it did
right?
for you, that you felt. But before you talk a little about that, I'm just throwing it out there so you know, when I come back I want to circle back to Tammy, because
Mm,
Tammy's been talking. You've spoken a lot about the psychological impact that it had on your mom.
Mhm.
um it was obviously might have been having an impact on your siblings and yourself as well, right? How did you guys cope during
Whew.
that?
um, we had to work together, and we needed each other's support. Um, I brought my mom up here primarily because I saw my brothers could not handle it. Um, with my training, I'm just more in tuned to that side and knowing what to expect. They
Mhm.
were going through their own difficulties. Ronald was at the end of the span of Guiave's lifespan. Okay,
Mhm.
so that was a summer he closed down Guiave right after I left.
It was
Okay,
difficult.
so there was a lot of pressure on him
Mhm.
um, to keep the business. Mom's depending on him, and Jock was going through a transition as well.
Mhm.
I think he had just opened up his office in
Mhm.
Roseau. I'm trying to remember, but it was a lot, and I thought, I, my brothers will not survive this. I gotta bring mom up. When I brought her up, I mean, I remember thinking she has round the clock care, and there are 4 or 5 people that we had hired round the clock. I'm one person, and I have my kids to take
Mhm.
care of. And I remember there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this at the level. So I started just looking up occupational therapy exercises. I'm not an occupational therapist, I'm a psychologist, but I
Mhm.
had to look up to and do my own research to then start to give her little exercises, because mom was not even able to pour a glass of water. So I had her practicing. I want you to hold a glass and let's try pouring. Then I started doing things where I would take paper clips together and get paper clips and have her do a line of paper clips so she can work on her motor skills, her finer motor skills,
Mhm.
right? Encouraging her to now practice brushing your hair, because the caregivers were brushing her hair, they were dressing her. And I'm like, if I have to do all of this for you, I will get completely burned out, right? And
Mhm.
so when
mhm.
she came up, she had a bit of an understanding. Now, we still had to, everything she wanted, my kids or I had to go get it for her. She was not getting up as often because she was dizzy. So it wore me down. it absolutely, you're talking about, serving 3 meals a day, going to the bathroom with her, helping bathe her. She started doing a little bit, but with the balance issues, you want to be there helping dress
Right?
her.
But she could fall, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
And then at night, I keep adjusting myself. At night, if she has to wake up to go to the bathroom, I got to go with her. So it got to the point,
Mm.
Jail, where my sleep was really disrupted because I kept hearing her calling me when she wasn't even calling me.
Oh,
So
wow.
you keep thinking, I'm hearing, Tammy, Tammy.
Definitely.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I'd jump up and I'd go and check on her, and she'd be fast asleep. Or there'd be time. There was one time she actually slipped and fell. And she made it funny. She actually fell in the hamper, the clothes hamper,
Wow.
caught her, so she didn't get hurt. But yeah. So as a caregiver, it wears you down. I was taking my mom to 3 to 5 doctor's appointments a week, between doctor's appointments and clinics, because she was getting ear infections often. I had every type of specialist. Okay, so we had neurology, speech therapy, we had physical therapy. We're talking multiple times a week. And anybody who has been on duty, bedside of at a hospital, will tell you it is an exhausting thing. I don't know. I mean, respect to anyone who's a long-term caregiver, because after 3 months I was burnt out and we had to make other arrangements where my mom was then living with nearby, like 5 minutes away, with a relative of my husband's who also had caregivers round the clock. And so we got, we,
You're from a community. You're from the
yes,
community.
yes. But I would
Yes.
still go there every day, jail, every single day, and I would do their grocery shopping for them and take them to the appointments and so forth. So even when it's part time, it can be tiring. I would call my brothers sometimes and just cry from just exhaustion. Complete. I wouldn't let her see that I was worn out. You try to smile, you try to make sure that she knows that she can
Mhm.
depend on you.
Mhm.
But when she's on one side of the house and I was on another side, I said, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm bawling, crying, because I'm drained. I'm mentally, physically drained. So it is a lot. It takes a lot from a caregiver. And there are a lot of people who have round the clock caregivers where they rotate. So one
Mhm.
person doing it, it's too much.
Cannot,
It,
yes, too
it
much.
depends on the level of functioning again, but if a
Yeah.
person needs a lot of care, it can be too much for
Wow.
one person.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Tammy. Rosalind, you knew about this as well firsthand
Yes.
because you have, and you and your sisters. I mean, I know all of you, and you guys are very fairly close, a very close knit family. And what was that like for you guys? I mean, in as much as I know. Because I know the kind of personality you are, you might say, "Oh, I was happy to take her. It's my mom. It's my you know."
No, no, no.
What was it like
Even
for
when
you guys?
even when she was by me, the others would still come and share just what sometimes they would tell me, Rosalind, don't cook this morning. I'm bringing her the lunch. Don't do whatever, I'll come and prepare the dinner. So it was never a burden.
But
And the
but
same
was
way
that
she was by,
important for you? Because you
yes,
say it was
yes, because sometimes you're tired, because sometimes you get up in the morning, you prepare the breakfast, sometimes it could be, it can be tiring at times. But so
Mhm.
the help was always welcomed.
I
Yes.
can imagine,
Yes.
and that actually is something that people need to take note of because last month, we had someone, Juanita, who experienced a stroke. She spoke last month, and one of the things she said, her recovery was so important. What helped speed up her recovery was family. And now we're hearing from you guys that
Mhm.
you are there as family, but you're
Mhm.
also very tired.
Yeah,
You also need
Mm.
the help, you need the support. It cannot just be a one-man show. It has to literally be a community
it is.
where somebody, even if you
Right.
even if you're the person, it's like you almost feel like the person that is housing that stroke patient should only probably be just housing them, and there should be people coming in, somebody
And
bringing
do
the breakfast,
stuff.
bringing it, because you have to.
Right.
Your role is to stay alert. If they fall, if they need to go to the
Yes.
bathroom, if
Yeah,
they, and all of the other
Right.
responsibilities can become so extremely overwhelming. And that is what I'm hearing from you guys, and it makes me feel very, I'm
Right.
touched by it I recognize how important. There, Cece? Oh, I think
Uh-huh.
we lost them. They were having some technical difficulties, so we lost them for a second. But I was about to circle back to you, Tammy, and folks are on the live and they're saying hi. They're greeting you guys, and I just wanna acknowledge their presence. So we have Valda saying good evening, very interesting discussion. The caregivers need a caregiver as well most times. So
Amen. Amen.
Melissa is saying, yes, it's a lot of work. I had to take care of my grandmother. And plus, I had to do a 9 to 5, but it was also very rewarding. Gashi Dublin is saying, it's so true. Sandra Norris is saying, good evening to UJL and guest. Hi, Tammy. So she's
Hi,
hi.
Sandra.
Folks are coming on. And guys, when you come on, don't forget to tag a friend or share. Just hit the share button so that somebody else can get in on the conversation so they can have the information that is so necessary. And the fact that we're speaking with Tammy is we're getting a bit of both worlds, and
Mm-hmm.
because she is, if you're just tuning in, she's a psychologist by profession, but she was also a caregiver by in a personal
Yeah,
life, and she's able to
multiple
share,
times.
yes,
Yes.
both experiences with us. Um, Before we got cut off, or at least Rosin dropped off, we were talking about um, the psychological um, the psychological part of, or the
Mm-hmm.
effects of, not necessarily just the person who've experienced the stroke, but the persons who are caregiving for
Yeah.
them. And we were speaking about that. And can you talk a little bit to that from your professional perspective, Tammy? I see they've just come back on. I'll just wait for Rosalind to come back on screen, and then we'll bring them back on. But give us your professional.
So, depending on whether the person recovers, what the extent of the stroke and the damage to the brain, and whether the person is the age of the person, because the younger you are, the more likely that your brain will recover. So there's something called neuroplasticity, which basically means that the brain has a way of regenerating and making new connections. So if a part of the brain is damaged, the brain can rewire, so to
Hmm.
speak. And so other parts of the brain can then take on the duties of the part that's damaged, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if a person is older, naturally their brain is older. Um, and they are more at risk of developing dementia and so forth. As far as the psychological aspects, wow. So I went over what it is for the patient. For the caregiver, it's possible, depending on how much sacrifice you're making, to start, feeling, if it's something that goes into multiple years and you have to make sacrifices, you can't move around freely because you have this person depending on you. And so you have to keep in check, that you're getting outlets, or that you have some way of not becoming resentful,
Hmm.
that your life is basically on hold,
Hmm.
to care for your loved one. There are a lot of support groups, Jael, and I think support groups are really important. There are online support groups um, for just about everything, no matter what a person's going through. Uh, I really believe in support groups, because people who are going through the same thing are going to know what you're feeling. They're
They
going to
can understand.
validate. They'll be able to understand. Now, a lot of times when it comes to illness and stuff like that, people tend not to think, oftentimes tend not to think about these things unless it hits home, it's near them. And so that goes back to what we were talking about, which is, a person who's in good health and young may not think about what it's like to be a caregiver. Their parents are doing fine, right? Before my mom had a heart attack 3 years before the stroke. um, and that was my first indication, wow, my mom is mortal, because my grandmother lived till her 90s. And I always thought mommy's just going to keep going and living till, whatever age. But when she got the heart attack, it was just like reality check. Okay, because the difference is my grandmother didn't work outside the home. My mother worked very, very hard, and she had hypertension. And if the
Mm-hmm.
hypertension is not managed, you're at risk of other complications.
Like stroke.
And this is also where um, I've told you I get brain freezes,
Take your
my
time.
brain glitches.
Take your
Okay,
time.
compliance with medication. So my mom, after the heart attack, she was supposed to have stayed on medication,
Mhm.
but her follow-up appointment with a cardiologist was scheduled right around the time Maria hit. And so when Maria hit, she canceled her appointment, and she was advised, probably not the best advice, to not continue this medication. So what happens is her heart developed more clots. Clot went to her brain. And so this goes back to advocacy for your own health, learning. We are at a point in the world now where information is available to everybody. It used to be doctors had training, and you were not a doctor, you just listened to the doctor. And I don't want my doctor friends to get upset with me now, because
Let them get upset. Let them get
many
upset.
physicians don't like when patients come in and say, I read this or I know this, because they say, I went to medical school. But I'll be the first to tell you, okay, I didn't go to medical school. I went to graduate school for psychology. But when a person's going through it, there's only so much theory and practice can tell you. The person going through it knows what they're going through.
Who
And so
feels
it's
it knows
important.
it.
Yes, who feels it knows it, right?
Hmm.
But also, it is our responsibility to advocate for ourselves. I mean, I was my mom's, as her caregiver, I was her primary advocate. I was the one who was speaking on her behalf to doctors. So, and this goes into also the role of caregivers, right? You're now managing finances, probably. You're
Hmm.
managing all their appointments,
Hmm.
because they cannot. If a phone call comes in, oh, this is so and so doctor to schedule for so and so, they can cognitively manage all of that. So you're
Hmm.
taking on all those responsibilities. Okay, I lost my train of thought. You can
No,
have
but
to
I,
see where I
I
was.
like you. You'll get it back. I like what you brought up about advocacy for self, as well
Yes.
as advocating for them as a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so important. I know doctors get upset when people come in with their own let me tell you, I self-diagnose all the time, and I self-diagnose for multiple reasons, but the one of the main reasons is because obviously I straddle between North America and Dominica. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm in North America as a woman of color, there are certain
Yeah.
conditions that are not recognized or even
Mm-hmm.
understood by physicians,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to articulate what you're feeling and where the symptoms might be closest to, at least, and
Yeah.
stand your ground when you're told, hey. So when
Absolutely.
you're told certain things, say no, this is how I'm feeling. And I had a very similar situation happen to me
Mm-hmm.
just a few months ago. And I
Yeah.
had to literally tell my doctor, who is Iranian, I said to her, I did the research, my
Yeah.
sister did the research. This is how I'm feeling, and we need to test for this. Until
Yeah.
we rule it out, you're not going to tell me that that's not what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to really stand your ground. And when the test came back, it was exactly what I said I
Mm-hmm.
was feeling. There was another instant even before that
Mm-hmm.
that I was feeling a certain way, and she said no, and the test did prove that she was right.
Yeah.
I prefer that you tested and you're proven that it's incorrect or it
Right.
is correct. That way you can get the necessary care that you need,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of taking. So that's what you said was so important, because even as caregivers, you also have to think for, so in the case of, if it's your mommy, how are you feeling? You feeling dizzy?
Mm-hmm.
You feeling this? It could be vertigo. It could
Mm-hmm.
be, there could be so many things, right?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean that she's losing her mind, or it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily mean that she's depressed, or it doesn't. I mean, all of the
Mm-hmm.
things that you're saying is so important for us to note, so that we don't just dismiss it. And that is our problem as Caribbean people. We tend to dismiss it. Every pain can be healed with Vicks and shilling oil. That is not the case. Vicks and shilling oil does not heal everything. Granted, my
Yeah.
sister will fight me on that and say that Vicks and shilling oil cures it all. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
able to speak up for ourselves and for our loved ones when they're
Yeah.
going for certain things, and they may we be going through something and we just recognize it. And you, Tammy, you had the extra um wisdom that came from your own
Mm-hmm.
professional experience, that you were able to tap into these different things that you suspected your mom was going through that your
Yeah.
brothers did not suspect, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously they're not tuned in with that, you know. And we have to be very, very, and I'm glad you raised this, because it's vigilant. Thanks, Rosa. You have to be very vigilant,
Absolutely.
in terms of being a caregiver
Mm-hmm.
for someone who is, I mean, not necessarily just stroke, but just who is ill, you know, period.
Absolutely.
You know, so
And you're seeking second and third opinions. And I'll
right.
tell you, even when you're in a first world country like the United States, where you have every possible specialist, they don't necessarily always do their job really well. I mean, the first neurologist my mom was referred to was so lackadaisical. You know, I went into the office and I said, these are my concerns. She didn't read the reports, the CT scan, the MRI reports, and she just sort of glazed over a couple of things. And I said, these are some of my concerns, not addressed. I took her to another neurologist. He addressed a couple of things, but there continued to be problems with her eyes. And let me tell you, my mom knows that if she says, this is wrong, I will investigate and I will get to the bottom of it and I will seek and seek until I'm satisfied with the answer.
Mhm,
Not everybody is going to do that.
mhm.
Um,
So FYI, you need to have a Vash in the family.
you
If
have you yes, everybody has to have somebody in the family who, yes, that is right, and I'm that. Yes.
Rosin, you're laughing and agreeing with a few things. I see you
Yeah.
shaking your head. You know, with the what was your did you have to fill in an advocacy role, or who was the advocate? Who was the Vash in the family?
No, because when a few days they called and said they need to have a family meeting at the hospital,
Mhm,
and we went there and they explained and said that they want to do another scan. So we said yes, we would like that, and they said it has to be done within 24 hours. Fine, yes, go ahead. We give you the consent to go ahead. But 3 days down the line, nobody could tell me anything. What is the result from the scan that you had? Oh, ma'am, we have not done it. I said, let me tell you something. I was very impressed with your meeting. And you said there was an action that needed to be taken. It should have been taken. You cannot tell me 3 days after you have not taken the action, but you called me to a meeting to say you were going to do it within 24 hours. And I said, I want the result, otherwise I'm going to report to you.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
You have to
So I
stand
was
your. You have to stand.
very impressed with the meeting. I was very impressed. Spoke
Mhm.
about diet, spoke about everything, said what action was going to be taken. But 3 days down the road, no action was taken. And it was
Wow,
disappointing.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So Tammy, you brought your mom now to the States, and she's
Mhm.
gone through all of these testings,
Mhm.
and you're doing all of this. How was her progress like, or what has her progress been
Yeah.
like? You know?
Okay. So from the moment I got her up here, well, she had another stroke a week after she came up here. Okay. And was hospitalized. After that, she got all the treatments and so forth. Her mood started lifting. She started on an antidepressant. Her mood started lifting. She now wanted, oh, so she was getting physical therapy how many times a week. She was getting stronger. And I remember her like, where are we going to this weekend? We're going out, right? We're going out. So now I have a hot foot on my hands because
Diva, Diva is.
she wants to do EV. And then she wanted to go back home. So she was able to travel. Like, so we'd have one family member take her down. She went down to Dominica. So we're talking like maybe, yeah, the following summer, spent
Mhm,
some time in Dominica, went back up. Um, so she made really good progress. But here's the kicker, Jael. The first year after a stroke is a critical year.
Mm-hmm.
That is when a person, you will see how much progress they can make. After that year has passed, it's there's very little progress that can be made if interventions were not done. So
hmm,
if you remember with my mom, I got her at 11 months. She had some therapy, but it was not enough. And when she got intense therapy, speech therapy, um, which was more than just learning to speak. They actually focused on assessing her cognitively, which they did a screening, which is called the MOCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. That's what our dear president was given, and he thought he aced it. So let me just say that a cognitive assessment is not an intelligence assessment. It doesn't tell you you're brilliant. It tells you if you're impaired. So the average person is supposed to ace it because that means you're functioning. And if you don't ace it, it means you are impaired. So once you got that assessment, it backed up my concerns about dementia. So here's the other thing. So this is where dementia comes in. I noticed my mom was more confused about certain things. When she was having a shower by me, she said, "Which one is red and which one is which one is cold and which one is hot? The red or the blue?" I'm like, Self-care. She would want to wear the same shirt 2 days in a row, even if food fell on it. And I said, "That's not my mom. That's not the kind of person she is." Then you start seeing difficulty with continence. And there's an accident here. When I take her to the doctor, she's not understanding what the doctor is saying. So she'd say to me, "What did the doctor say?" And I realize she's not processing the information, right? So all of this is the cognitive effects. You're seeing a decline. And so you want to be able to say how much of it is a stroke, how much of it is beyond the stroke. So when a screening is done and you see now that the person is in the range of possible dementia, then in my case, I requested further testing. So a thorough battery of tests for dementia. Turns out that she did meet requirements for a dementia diagnosis. Again, I lost my train of thought. Reel me back in.
No, you are right on point. You are talking about the others, not necessarily side effects, but the other things that can be affected as a
Right.
result and you brought up dementia, and obviously if someone who's older experiences a stroke, it might not be full, because again we assume dementia is they cannot remember your face, they don't know who you are, and
Yeah.
that when we hear dementia we just think they've forgotten who they are, or they only can remember themselves as a young person, and if you were not in their life as a young person, balpoint, that's what we
Right.
look at it as. Whereas it is more than that. It is
Yes.
just recognizing or saying the wrong words for other things, or not understanding completely what is being
Right.
said, and having to
Mm-hmm.
ask for you to reiterate,
Mm-hmm.
or for you to repeat what was said, or just not recognizing red and blue, which one is cold and which one is hot, like you just rightfully
Mm-hmm.
spoke about, or the lights,
Yeah.
the which is on and off, and
Mm-hmm.
just recognizing these simple things, and that is early onset dementia as well,
Yes.
and that we recognize. So I
Yes.
like that you brought that up. Anything, I mean, I know from your professional perspective you might be able to speak to things that if somebody's younger than the age, obviously younger than you would expect them. I mean, although dementia does not really have, there's no age when it comes to
Yes.
dementia. It can hit you at any time,
Yeah.
but for somebody who's younger, what could potentially be some of the signs that
Mm-hmm.
they need to pay attention to, that they might, because I have a friend who I remember had a stroke younger,
Yeah.
and their personality changed so much. They got
Mm-hmm.
so troublesome. Like I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't understand, like why Mr. So troublesome now? Like he
Mm-hmm.
was such a cool, calm, collective individual, and all of a sudden he just so troublesome to the point I used to be annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like why are you so
So
troublesome?
there's a
Yeah.
type of dementia called temporal frontal dementia, or some frontal temporal dementia, or something like that. But the idea is it's the frontal lobe of your brain that's being affected, and the temporal lobe, right? So if a person has a stroke and that's primarily where the blockage was, um, then they're more likely to have the personality changes, because that's a part of the brain that sort of handles personality, right? If
Mhm.
a person is younger and they're struggling to remember things like their people's date of birth or their address, or social security number or telephone numbers that they otherwise would know. um, how to do certain things. They're getting confused about how to do certain things. All these things ought to be flags, right? um, what else? The self-care starts to go down. There's an apathy, a, a, a flat affect or a restricted constricted affect. The person doesn't, they're not experiencing the fullness in their
Wow.
expressions. um, then you want to take a look at that as well. Now
Mm.
sometimes physicians wait until a person is far along in their symptoms to diagnose. I've noticed that up here. um, but the reality is the brain deteriorates way before one shows symptoms of dementia,
Wow.
even with Alzheimer's, right? So a person might show symptoms of Alzheimer's, but their brain had started deteriorating years before. It just hasn't been picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And so with stroke, that's the injury. The injury is the stroke. The brain
Mm-hmm.
has cells in the brain have died. That's the onset, and um, then later on you start seeing, because you the person is going to have the symptoms of the stroke initially, right? Their speech is going to be messed up, and so the question then becomes how much of it is a stroke recovery and how much of it is actual dementia that's kicking
Mm-hmm.
in. And
Wow.
that's where one needs a professional to evaluate.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. I want to circle to Rosalind. Rosalind, you took this course. Tell me some of the things that you learned about being a caregiver that you felt, you said, because one of the things you said at the start is that it was so good, it was so helpful, and somebody might be saying, well, Messiah teach you now. What did she learn like that was so helpful? Tell us a little bit about the course, and what are some of what were some of your takeaways, that really meant a lot to you?
One was the meal plan, how to prepare their meals based on what condition they're in, the feeding, how to feed them, how to turn them on the bed,
Yes.
how to do their beds.
So you don't
How
quiver yourself, because people quiver themselves, eh?
That's
it
true.
was very interesting. It was very
Yeah.
interesting, the techniques, how to roll them. And when you watch it, it was hands on. It's not like you're just watching the person do it. So these were very good um, parts of the course, I must say. Very, very good ones. Yeah, because there was
Wow.
a lot of information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was most of it was practical stuff that you could do
Practical
to
practice.
help
Yes.
speed up the recovery,
Yes.
as well as maintain their health, for good health,
Yes.
following a stroke.
Signs to observe, how to observe them,
Hmm.
monitor them, because like even with my mom, after that I realized her pattern for eating certain things that she had loved, then she said she no longer wants them. Then we know we don't have to provide them anymore. And these were some of her favorite things, but no, she don't want to see it anymore. So you
Eh,
go with the flow sometimes. Yes, you have to just go with your flow. So if she says she no longer wants that, we just cut it off. We don't argue with her to have her raised or whatever. So no, certain things you find they will just change. Yeah, the taste bud more or less change. So you just go with the flow. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, wow, that is interesting.
and
Tammy,
sometimes the appetite increases tremendously
Yeah,
after a stroke. Sometimes
sometimes, but
appetite grows.
in the beginning she wasn't eating, but we observe now. I'm satisfied the way she's eating now. I'm
Hmm.
satisfied.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wow. So we've touched on quite a few things, as a caregiver, and those of you who are on online, I see you guys are commenting, you guys are having conversations within the conversation, and we truly appreciate that. It says you guys are engaged in the conversation. Is something that you find very important. Melissa adds, also we should talk about overstimulating the brain, not overstimulating, or not overstimulating the brain, especially in the first stages. So
Hmm.
she asked a little bit about whether or not you could talk to that. I mean,
Sure.
Rosen, you made a very valid point and said, some she didn't like certain things, that she, and I'm sure Tammy also said there was probably some of the people that they don't want around them anymore, and they don't want, but also like overstimulation, and in terms of why, because I feel as humans we can become so impatient when
Hmm.
somebody is ill, and we don't understand that I'm a very impatient person. Okay, so I know, and my mom didn't have a stroke. My mom died of different causes,
Yeah.
but when she was ill, I became very impatient at times. Just saying like, why isn't she getting better? Like, just get better already.
Oh,
It's like it was just you don't like to see the person like that, and even simple things, you would be like, why they're not understanding this, or why is, like, normally you just kind of get it, and it makes you almost come across as if you're being harsh, or you're being, you're
mhm.
not able to be understanding. Tammy, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the
Stimulation.
overstimulation, or the.
Yeah. So with stimulation, there's a sweet spot, right? So you don't want to overstimulate a stroke survivor, but you don't want to understimulate them either. So overstimulating could be um, somebody coming to visit and talking, and wanting to visit for a long time and talking. They cannot keep up with that. They're having a hard time keeping up. They're going to get tired very, very quickly.
Mhm,
So people want to be considerate in their environment about how much noise there is, how much music you play, the
mhm,
lights. Just be considerate and just get a feel from them about what is comfortable.
mhm,
Their body temperature and their body temperature regulation can change. So a person might feel cold a lot. And so you might want to make sure that they're well covered and they're warm.
mhm,
Um, Under stimulation now would be not giving them any activities to do. They need to be able to start practicing and learning things. So when my mom came up, I said, Mom, we're going to cook. And so and I'd get the kids involved. And so the first time she got in the kitchen was at my house, and I got the rolling pin, and it was good exercise for her to start doing that instead of everybody doing everything for her. Now it builds the confidence, right? So
mhm,
maybe if it's a man, for instance, and he used to tinkle with cars, then it's okay now to give them a little bit of exposure to, hey, just come and watch somebody working on an engine, or pass me a tool.
mhm,
So now you're rewiring their brain. You're reintroducing things that they used to be able to do that they can't
mhm,
do, or they couldn't do for a while, but then they can learn to do. So it's a tricky thing. Like what I've noticed with my mom, sometimes she really wanted to do things, and other times she just didn't. Like some days she just didn't want to do her physical therapy. Some days she just didn't want to do her speech therapy. And so I would sort of improvise instead of taking her to the speech therapist. I'd hang out with her, and I would get a flip chart, and I'd be like, okay, so we're going to go through these pictures. Tell me what that is. So it should be apple, banana, whatever. And then I'd get my daughter to do it. So once you have a cute little girl doing it, she's more motivated. It's not some physical
mhm,
therapist, right? It's her granddaughter. She wants to connect. So
mhm,
yeah, there's a sweet spot, and you try to
mhm.
find that sweet spot. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And folks are agreeing on the live. Sari is saying such an important topic. One of the things I wanted us to talk a little bit about was in terms of, was it medication? I believe it was medication. And in terms of ensuring that they take medication on time,
Oh
they
yeah.
they
Whew.
eat healthy, all of
Right.
these things that caregivers that role that caregivers have to play. Because one of the things, Tammy, we spoke about even before you came on, is like you had to start doing hot meals round the clock, like
Mhm.
hot meals at whenever necessary, and we spoke about the draining aspect of it on a caregiver, but I want to talk about the importance of it to the
Yeah.
actual stroke patient, how
Mhm.
important that is to try to maintain the proper health, proper eating habits, as well as their medication, because the lack thereof can also bring other things, right? So
Absolutely. So,
go ahead.
as a caregiver, you're expected to manage their medications. And what I found helped me, which I learned from caring for my mother-in-law, is getting an automatic medicine dispenser, because my mom eventually ended up on so many medications, because you have one for blood pressure and you have one for cholesterol, and she was in heart failure, so we have one for the heart failure stuff, and then there was dizziness, so there's one for the dizziness, but something side effect causes nausea, so there's one for the nausea, and then there's one for the urinary incontinence, so there's that, and then there's stuff for the anxiety, so there's that, and then there's stuff for sleep. So she went from a person who never took medication, and that's something about this country, right? We know that there's a medication for everything. And people might have different feelings about that, but just assuming the person is on multiple medications, you want to manage it. Make sure you have a dispenser with the days. I did the automatic dispenser, so once every 2 weeks, I would fill her dispenser, and they sell them on Amazon. They to dispense the medication, you have to turn it over, so it alarms. You set the times of the day. So I knew she had to take this medication at that time and that medication at that time. So you program it, and then it dispenses it. And yeah, it's a safety thing. You want to keep track, because you don't want them to miss their blood pressure medication, um, yeah, and that goes for, let me talk about young people, right?
Right.
Blood pressure
Mm-hmm.
problems. A lot of people in our culture have hypertension, and it's really important for people to understand that not taking medication or being on a medication that is not managing their hypertension puts them at risk for a stroke. And yeah, we talked about men not necessarily liking to take medicine for hypertension because it may result in erectile dysfunction. And yeah, that's an important part of your life, but it is a small thing compared to, imagine you get a stroke and
For
now
women though, for women, Tammy, we think it is a small thing. For
mhm,
men, it is a
it's everything.
huge deal for them.
Well,
We look at it as a small thing, right?
yeah.
Because we are the nurturers. They
Hmm.
need to feel macho.
Yeah.
And when that goes away from that, well, that's taken away from them by medication, introducing those medications,
Yeah.
they don't feel like they
Well,
want.
if a man is
There
not
must
going to take medication for his blood pressure, he wants to find alternative ways to manage it. Make sure he exercises regularly, right? Whether they're, and I'm not a physician, so
Exercise counts.
let me not go outside my area of expertise, right? Um, but I mean, what they need to check their blood pressure regularly, and if they need to consult with a physician or consult with somebody about what are natural ways to manage their blood pressure, because there are people with high blood pressure who don't have to take meds because they manage it
Mhm.
by eating well,
Well,
exercising
without
regularly, and so forth. So yeah, each person has to make a decision, but let me tell you, if you have a stroke and you need someone to bathe you and wipe your butt eventually, that's humiliating too. So so
it's even worse.
yeah, so yeah, no.
Mhm. Um, Rosalind, I wanna give you a little time here to talk to us a little bit about, the importance of educating yourselves, especially when you have parents who are becoming older, or not just parents. A lot of young people might be listening to the program and they have grandparents living with them, or their grandmother might be living down the street or in another community that they go by and visit. What is the importance of educating themselves in terms of, because this is something that will happen. It might not happen today, it might not happen tomorrow, but it will happen, where it might not be a stroke, but it might just be illness in general. And thankfully for you, you felt that the information that you learned was so beneficial to you, because I know just talking about a meal plan, we say meal plan, and as Dominicans, our meal plan is give us our dashing and our this and our that, and we good, our belly full, and we good, but that is not it.
Yeah.
And not just, and it's not just what you're cooking, is the the quantities of what you're feeding the
Quantify.
person, and so many different things, right? So share with us a little bit about the importance of knowledge when it comes to, or educating yourself when it comes to, in your case, stroke and being a caregiver for a stroke patient.
Because it came in handy in that I was able to observe differences in my mom's eating habits, the way sometimes she reacts to if we talk to her, so you know when and how to talk to her. So it helped me in that aspect. Her meal plans, there were certain things we really cut off from her based on how rich she's eat before. We had to
Mhm.
cut that off. And obviously she was upset, but we explained to her what were the consequences of eating such food that she need to get out of it. After that she agreed, but it helped. And we don't know when it will be our turn. We don't know when is another person love. It doesn't have to be an old person these days. You realize young people are getting strokes, they're getting sick. So it would be a good thing that we educate ourselves, that we can help. Because even in that program that I did, they have connected the people that some people are getting jobs. Sometimes also one person have to go to Matnik to work as a caregiver in Matnik. So you get connections with young people. You can educate yourself. There are opportunities out there. There are people always
Mhm.
looking for people to help them, people to take care of their loved ones. So something will come up. So it is not saying like, why should I go and take care of old people? There are opportunities out there because few of
Yes,
them are.
yes.
But there are
That's a good
opportunities.
That's
There
a
are.
very good point. That's a no, and there are a lot of people. I mean, our population is aging. Like
Right.
we have a huge aging population, so it might not be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, but it might be your neighbor down the road that might
Neighbor,
need help, or
and they get
family
their
over.
their job opportunity as well. So
Right, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Tammy. I wanna give you an opportunity to have, a final say in terms of the importance of being a caregiver. I mean, I know um, Juanita spoke to it, how important it is to have family around you, because that was part of her saving grace, so
Yeah.
to speak. Having not just family around you, but family who cared, family who took initiatives. In your case, you left, you went down, you picked her up, you brought her up. People take turns bringing her, just so she can have
Mhm.
some level of normalcy
Yeah.
that she would be accustomed to. And how important do you believe your role was in terms of your mom getting to the point where she is today, which is a lot better than where she
Well,
started out?
she got better, Jael. She got better, but then started declining again.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's the dementia part. She's still, I mean, if somebody's around my mom, they might say, well, there's nothing that wrong with her, right? Because she can relate, but it goes up and down. Sometimes she's really alert and sounds really good, and other times all the symptoms bother her so much. She's withdrawn and down. So yeah, and then if someone's just conversing with you and they're just saying, hey, how are you doing, and so forth, you're not really getting a good idea of what their cognitive functioning is like necessarily. Can this person write a check? Can this person do arithmetic? Can they balance, do numbers? The other day I was driving with her, and I'll tell you this. She's very observant, and she looked at the radio station and she repeated the numbers and said that's the time. So let's say it was 98.1 or something. And then she was like, but that's not the time. That's just the radio station. Right?
Hmm.
So you see how it can get
Yes, it
confusing.
at cost,
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah. So how important was my role? Absolutely. If I did not bring my mom up here, she would have died. I'm pretty sure she would have died in Dominica. Um, there was just so much that was so many services that were like sort of
Right.
provided to her, that she was able to make that little sort of recovery. Had it been sooner, maybe it would have been more long lasting, but we don't know. um, it's sort of in closing, I would say people typically don't like to think about illness and death, right? I mean, I've been talking about this. People typically don't like to think about those things. But as we get older, there are more people that we know that are going to have severe illnesses, and are going to pass away. And if anybody watching this has never encountered anybody that they've had to care for, but they know a friend or an aunt or an uncle who has some illness, I think it's important to sort of use the opportunity to learn something about it, and imagine what things would be like now for you with your parents, or even for you. What would happen if I get a stroke? Who would take care of me? These are things that people want to think about. Who is there to take care of me? What do
Mm-hmm.
I need to put in place to prepare? Whether it's like financially, because care is expensive. We didn't talk about the expense. Care is expensive if it's round the clock and then the person is degenerating. Now, if you have somebody who recovers, fine, right? But if you have somebody who has a stroke and then they're going down and down, there are people I know who had strokes at the same time as my mom and have passed away. So if it's an older person, especially, chances are they're at risk for more strokes, they're at risk for dementia, they're at risk for decline down the road. A lot of planning has to take place, and which is why I was telling you that I like to know things in advance. I like to prepare in advance, right? I like to see
Mm-hmm.
what's coming. I don't want to be surprised. So, I got
Mm-hmm.
my mom diagnosed with dementia much earlier than the average person would, but that allowed me now to get services in place to support, to prepare in advance, and sort of even end of life arrangements. These are things that you gotta think about. So yeah, we are in our 40s, 50s, 60s. Those are getting there. Even in 30s, people are, you're going to start losing people. I mean, all we have to do is look at MO News and see the amount of funerals every day in Dominica. Um, Health, without our health, we have nothing.
Yep.
You can be most accomplished, but if you don't take care of your health and you have a major health event, your whole life can change. Whole life can change. So my little two pieces to say, people, check on your health, men especially. Check on your health, get your annual checkups, make sure you know what's your cholesterol level, what's your blood pressure, do you have diabetes, are you pre-diabetic? If you're pre-diabetic, it's time to start exercising, and watching your diet. Stay away from margarine. I don't know if you guys know about this, but margarine has been implicated in increasing, the risk of dementia. And I put the two together, right? Butter is the thing,
Butter.
not margarine. So
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And folks are agreeing with you on here. People are talking about artificial seasonings like
Mhm.
saison. It's not good to be used for a stroke patient. So people are giving us their 2 cents and stuff. Rosanna, your final words. I wanna open up the floor to you to give your final words before we wrap up.
Thanks for having me, JL1. And I hope people listening out there when Ray Asta advertises that training again, that
Mm-hmm.
people will take the opportunity and go and learn something. And it wouldn't just save you, it could help your family, help a neighbor. As I said, it could be a job opportunity at the end. So at least you'll be learning something. So go
Yes.
out there, make yourself a better person so that you can help somebody else.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Tammy,
Thank you, Jael.
wrap up. Thank you for being
You
on
help me
here.
feel comfortable doing this, and the Fuedi is definitely
Putting
my bones right now. It's Fuedi in right now. I have to go inside.
I just want to say thank you to both of you for your time, and for coming on and sharing. I mean, not often we come from a culture where we're very prideful and we don't want to share too much of the experience. First of all, we don't want to tell people our family members sick. Sometimes we just hide it for months and months, and the person fall on boot up and they die, and we're like, oh, I didn't know someone was sick, because we're very prideful community.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you very much for both of you taking the time, and also being brave enough. I know Rosie was like, more Damien, that camera situation, and And look at that. Look at that. It happened.
I can relate.
You were, Tammy, you yourself, you had your own reservations, but like I always say to everyone, this is a comfortable space, and I just want to thank you for taking the time and trusting me to have this conversation on my platform, as well as through the RAYASTA Foundation, so that folks can be informed on making the better decisions for themselves as well as their loved ones, especially when it comes to around stroke and survival after stroke, thriving after stroke, caring for someone who is stroke. So I really truly appreciate all of the gems that you dropped in our buckets here this evening, including, obviously educating ourselves, because like Rosen said, there's opportunities, but not just educating ourselves, but being prepared in the event that a loved one has a stroke. Because you said something there, Tammy, and we didn't explore it. It's expensive.
Yes.
It's very. I mean, when I heard you talk about the 5 doctors a week, Lame, we cannot cheap. So, so
Yes.
I can only imagine, the expense that came with that, and then having a caregiver. In some cases, and that's why sometimes people often opt to looking after their loved ones on their own, because it's so costly. But that means you're driving yourself to the ground, because you're exhausted from running around. So I really want to say thank you very much to both of you for coming on, and I want to encourage the viewers, the listeners, the followers to make sure you follow the RAYASTA Foundation. It's available on Facebook and Instagram. Follow the pages. Like Rosalind said, we will post information as it relates to any new and any upcoming courses that may be available or may become available to you. So I encourage you to follow the pages, and if you need any other information, you can always log on to RAYASTA, that is RAYASTA, ASTA Foundation.org, and that is the website. You can also log on there, and there's a lot of information that is provided for you on there. I want to say thank you to Cece, and thank you to Auntie Jennifer for really spearheading this, and really making sure that people are informed, because without knowledge, knowledge is power, right? And you want to ensure that so that you can be prepared, you can be supported properly, you can know what to ask, you can know what to do, so it doesn't catch you off guard. So thank you very much to my guest again, and it was a pleasure having both of you on.
All
And
right.
take care of yourselves.
Everybody.
Take good care of yourselves.
Okay.
All right, guys, that's it. That's it for us here this evening. I want to say thank you again to the RAYASTA Foundation, who brought this wonderful program here for you this evening. And I hope you guys learned something. And, I'm hoping that, we can do more of these kinds of conversations. They're not the popular ones. However, they're very important. These kinds of conversations can help you save a life, probably even yours, right? Remember, you gotta do what you need to do due diligence. There's a lot of information online. There's a lot of information available to you, and don't be shy. Inform yourself, and hopefully you don't end up with any stroke or a stroke and you don't know what to do. Your family members end up with a stroke and you're not sure what to do, or you can't even recognize it. Get the information so that you're informed. Thanks again to those of you who tuned in. Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you very much to all of you who tuned in on the live, those of you who commented, those of you who shared the live. Truly appreciate you. I want to remind you to keep following, keep subscribing, and turn on your notifications when we come on live again for another Jael Joseph Live. Until next time, have a good night. Bye-bye.